trying to understand why I became a Christian. That's something that's deep and it's multi-layered. I mean, first of all, I was born into a Christian household. We suffered a lot. Parents didn't get along. Mom was a typical suffering, quote-unquote, Christian, kind of almost believing in a suffering gospel. My parents weren't winners, so to speak. Grew up poor. Basically, we were poor. Tried to fend for myself at a young age. Dad left when I was 12. And I suppose this kind of set the tone for me not being successful in life. I'm not the most talented person. I'm ambitious. I've got heavy drive, things like that. I plan a lot, etc. But I'm not the most successful person. I'm not a very successful person. Made some bad choices in high school. Did drugs, did the wrong kind of drugs. Probably damaged my brain. I had a couple concussions before I was age 8, which probably were pre-existing conditions to lower my overall brain capacity, or my genetic potential was lowered greatly because of that. Drugs I took in high school, blacked out on whiskey a bunch of times, had the beginnings of an alcoholic, but I kind of steered away from it. Eventually took mushrooms, psychedelic or psilocybin or whatever those things are called. Had a nervous breakdown at age 18 because I moved to a large city. Was in the hospital was basically in the mental ward for 3 days. Was totally out of I wouldn't say totally out of my mind, but I was definitely having some weird psychological issues going on at that time. Very paranoid. The doctors were thinking that I had paranoid schizophrenia. A couple doctors said I would always be paranoid schizophrenic. That didn't happen, thankfully. I grew out of it. Of course, I had to end everything. I had to end school. I couldn't work, et cetera, et cetera. So during that time, my mom moved to the bigger city to move me in, basically, or to move back in with me because I was 18 at that time and I had nowhere to go. I couldn't fend for myself. And the way they help sick people in America is not the best. They don't just give you housing. You got to apply for it. It takes you a long time. You got to really prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you're actually sick, which is very hard to do. So this is all just precursor to me finding God, quote unquote. And during that time that my mom moved back, we moved to this actually really nice little apartment complex. It was right next to these woods. And I would go walk in the woods and stuff and have these meditations, and I would read Henry David Thoreau and all this philosophy and poetry I would read and all this kind of stuff. And it was like I was trying to be real esoteric, and I wanted to separate from the matrix. I wanted to separate from society at large and things like that. But during that time, I sort of was trying to figure it all out and trying to piece it all together. Why are we here? What's going on, etc. And I kind of started reading the Bible, and I believed the Bible. I grew up reading the Bible. I grew up believing in God. But it was I guess it was just something within me. I was like, yes, this is what I believe, period. There was no doubt in my mind. Actually, I've had doubt recently, but to curb that doubt, I've actually had a lot of spiritual experiences of God. I've had experiences of actually touching God, of actually, experiencing God on a deeper level. Unfortunately, those experiences didn't last, and I came back to the Matrix out of the church honeymoon, if you want to call it that, and sort of, came back to reality. And that's when I got red pilled, and that's when I learned the hard way about female nature and all these things. And so my experience with God is tied into me finding the red pill. My experience with God and leaving the Matrix and coming back to the Matrix is tied in with me learning the hard way about female nature, because there's verses in the Bible that say God's going to take care of us. There's verses in the Bible that say God cares for all our needs. Well, personally, I fully bought into the idea that sex is a necessity. In addition, I believe love is a necessity. I believe humans need love. But as we know in the red pill community, we can't be really loved as men unless we're doing something for the woman, unless we're providing a lifestyle for the woman, right? So that was hard for me. That was hard. I learned it the hard way through several bad relationships where I was hoping the girl was going to love me for me, and she didn't. And I even, unfortunately, experienced the cold shoulder in church from girls who were hypergamous in church. And of course, you could just say, well, maybe they weren't attracted to you, or maybe they just didn't like your aura, this, that, and the third. But no, I learned the hard way because of how they reacted to me, knowing that I wasn't employed, knowing that I was disabled. I grew up different. I grew up, being poor, but also I wasn't like, because I was poor doesn't mean I wasn't successful. I had periods in my life where I was successful in high school. I played on high school basketball team. I always had tons of friends. I've had lots of great experiences growing up as a kid, in a smaller city, of course, a less liberal city, which does matter, but I don't want to talk too much about that. But, it does come into play, but I had successes. So I wasn't, I had lots of girlfriends. Girls liked me. I'm not an ugly dude, etc. So I knew at a certain point when I hit my 20s, I learned the hard way. I learned, oh, okay, well, when they're young, girls will mess around with you. They'll date you. They'll kiss you and make out and some sex or whatever. But when it comes down to it, what they really want is they want a guy with money. They want a guy who's successful. They want a guy who has status insofar as he's paying bills, he's successful, and they want that in church, just like anywhere else, if not more than anywhere else. And so that didn't coincide with the Bible. That didn't coincide with God saying, I'm going to take care of your necessities. I was sick, I was disabled, I prayed a lot to be healed, I prayed a lot for God to take care of me, I prayed a lot for a wife, I prayed a lot for companionship, and basically I got shitted on. The girls in church didn't want to have anything to do with me. It wasn't happening because I didn't have money, because I was sick, and because they want a dude who's going to take care of them, and that's just what it is. And so that's biology. So I came into a scenario where science actually trumped faith. the biology and science of the world, which is that you gotta pay for things, you gotta have money, or else it's your ship isn't gonna sail, right? If you don't have money, if you don't pay your way, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna happen. No matter how much faith you have, no matter how much you believe God's gonna take care of you, it's just not gonna happen. Okay? So I came into a scenario like that where it's true, God didn't take care of me. He didn't take care of my needs. And so my experience was opposite of what the Bible said. It was opposite of what faith said. Faith said, believe in God. He's going to take care of you. He's going to give you everything you need. I care for all my I care for all my children. I care for all my followers. And then it just didn't happen. And so it's like, I'm sitting here for years, like crying and like wondering, well, why isn't this happening for me? Why isn't God caring for me? And then one day I just woke up and I just said, oh, it's just not going to happen because I don't have money and I need money and it's not going to happen. And so it's like, why would I follow God? Why would I follow a person who doesn't care for me? Why would it doesn't make sense to me. And so that's kind of how I left church. That's kind of how I separated from God. And I really haven't gone back since. I really, as far as my heart is concerned, I just sort of dropped out.